Okay, next I'm going to show you a Fir Tree. This is a different brush than what you have, but it is still a number 6 like you've got. So I'm first going to get my brush wet, and I'm going to get the paint on the, mix my paints. And I want a couple of different shades of green for this. I want kind of just a medium green. And then I'm going to want one that's darker for sure, and possibly one that's lighter. But I'm going to start off, I don't want to mix them all from the same base. So I'm going to use this as my base for all of them. And I'm going to add a little bit over here. And I'm going to add some over here that I can make just for some highlights and things. Now, on the color wheel, it's hard to tell on here, but across from green is red. So I'm going to move across to my red, which is this one, in my paintbrush. And it's not a true red, it's kind of a pinky red, but I'm going to use it to make my green darker. So I'm going to get some of that, and I'm going to mix it right here. And just to show you the difference in the color, this is this one, okay, and here's what we started with. So you can see how much darker that is. Now I don't want to keep it this same shade really. I'm going to add a little bit of the other green to it, like we did in class the other day, which is actually kind of a fir green when you mix those two together. Alright, so now I'm going to probably add just a little bit more red to this one to make it darker. Added a little too much red, so now I need to go back and add some more green. There we go. Okay, so that's going to be more of this color, kind of a deep forest green. Greens are my hardest, my biggest challenge in mixing, I've found. To mix a good green, I have a really hard time getting dark greens. Okay, I like that one though. So, first of all, I want to, this is the number 6. This is not the tiny brush like you have, but this is this one. And I'm going to start by using just the very tip of my thing. I'm barely touching down, and I'm coming, and as I get down closer to the bottom, I'll touch down a little bit more to make it wider. I'm going to just go over that to make it a little bit darker. Okay, so that's going to be the trunk of my fir tree, but by the time I'm done, you won't even really be able to see it. So I'm going to wash my brush, and I'm going to use one of these medium greens here. I think I'll use this one for a little bit. And I'm going to add some little, barely touching, I'm getting, and then as I get close to the stem, to the trunk, I push down further. And I'm going to show you this in another video too, but okay. So it's almost a light touch and then press down so that it makes kind of almost like a leaf shape to it. Notice that they're not all touching. They're not each other. You know, there's a little bit of space between them that gives me a little bit of leeway because the branches generally aren't all touching. There's usually lots of space between them. It's easier for me to kind of go down and do one side. And of course, you gradually get longer as you go. If you have to turn your paper or whatever, that's okay. So you can very lightly touch and then press down. Lightly touch, press down. And I do it slightly upturned. Oops, that one. I can make it a little bit longer while it's still wet like that, just very easily. All the way down. Okay, I'm going to go back and do the same thing on this side. I don't worry that they're not all the same, you know, exact same color or anything like that, because trees aren't. The light hits them differently, hits the branches, and some branches will be lighter color than others, and that's okay. That gives it a little bit of dimension too. So at first your tree kind of looks kind of like a fern or something like that when you're first starting. And then we're going to add some things, and that's what I want to show you, how to add to that to make them look a little bit more like a tree. So right now it kind of looks like a fern branch. But what I'm going to do now, and you can kind of see, I can still, while this is wet, I can still move this paint around some. And once it dries, it's going to dry that way. So, you know, I need to kind of move it now to kind of, okay. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to add just a touch of red to this one. I say a touch, it was actually a lot. Let me put a little more green in it again. Okay. And I think this is kind of a medium between, and see, I use this paper to test it, between this one and this one. Yeah. So this one's still a little bit darker, which is good. All right, so I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to go back over some of these and add, and I'm just kind of blotting in between and letting the colors run together. So it kind of obscures that, the trunk a little bit. Okay, so it's just adding a little bit of, don't go crazy with it, but leaving some white, because seldom are the branches so thick that you can't see any white. You usually can see some sort of white space or sky through it or something like that. So I'm going to add a little bit of this darker color to it. And then I think what really helps these look more like a tree than a feather or something like that is to go back and kind of add some little wild little things like this, just very, very lightly. I mean, it's kind of like when we added the feathers, the little hairs on the feather. It's kind of the same idea, and that's what, you know, trees have those little things sticking down. Those are the pine needles and such. So we're going to add those too. Try not to make this too uniform. Seldom are everything in totally symmetrical in nature. I like adding a little bit of that. If I keep adding right here, you can see how it's kind of pooling. It's going to get that halo effect. So I don't want to do that to it. So I might have to let it dry just a little bit before I add anything else that's super wet right here in the middle. But I can go ahead and add these, and I can use different colors to do that, which add the different dimension. Okay. Okay. I'm going to make this base a little bit thicker, and there we got a tree. I want to show you that once my evergreen dried, it's still looking a little bit flat right here. So now that it's dry, and it's not totally dry, but it's pretty much dry to the touch, I'm going to add a little bit more differentiation in color right in here so that I don't have this line and you know, where the paint is. So I'm going to add a little bit of these colors around here that just kind of break up that a little bit. So you can add layers to your if you let them dry in between. You can't do it while it's all wet because it just ends up being a yucky mess. If some of you probably have found that out. And I still do it from time to time because I'm very impatient. But anyway, I'm going to add that to it and kind of see if that gives it a little more dimension. Let me hold that up where you can see.